Hello, guys and gals, and welcome to another episode of Monster Families. Today, we're going to be taking a look at another one of the skeleton varieties, and this one is the skeleton archer. The skeleton archer comes in a couple interesting varieties, and it's kind of interesting to me, like because they have different elemental affinities. I always kind of thought that they had a magic arrow. And I kind of want to show this off before we do anything else. So, like, if you are in the palace and you come across the horror archers, it looks as though they are firing magic arrows at you. That's what it looks like to me, anyway. However, according to the Ariat Plateau, it says that they are firing lightning arrows, which I didn't even know lightning arrows was even a thing. I'm learning a lot about some of these monsters, going over the different types. Like, for instance, I didn't know that there was a spear ability called Ice Spear, which apparently was very similar to Power Strike on the Amazon, that apparently one of the spear-wielding character or monsters can use. So these guys are using a very similar ability to Magic Arrow, but instead of shooting magic, it shoots lightning. So there is a cold arrow, there is a fire arrow, and there is also apparently a lightning arrow. The Burning Dead archers, of course, shoot fire arrows, which is a whole other thing. And if you take a look at the Act 5 guest monsters, it says that the Returned and Bone Archers have a chance to deal cold damage, the Burning Dead ones deal fire, and the Horror Archers have a chance to deal a random element, which makes the Horror Archers in Act 5 particularly nasty, because that also means they can deal poison damage, which, as you all know, any poison damage tends to crit, and once the poison damage crits, well... exactly. Now, going over the actual archers themselves, they tend to be relatively weak individually, but as a unit, they are very strong. Skeletons do not seek to consume flesh of the living, or do many of their other undead kindred, but instead only seek to slay those who live to increase their ranks. Single-minded in their mission to slay the living, some of these animated warriors now use the bows that served them in life to deadly effect. Skeleton archers are undead. Yeah, they're always undead, of course. You also cannot life leech or mana leech from them, which makes them particularly nasty for melee and range characters that rely on mana and life leech. They basically have a drain effectiveness of 0 in all cases. You can use life tap on them, but that's not technically life leech. That's just a conversion of physical damage to life. It says that they're immune to poison in like all difficulties in hell. So just always immune to poison. In fact, the same thing for the guest monster list, always immune to poison, and apparently they're immune to poison in nightmare difficulty too, which kind of makes sense because they're skeletons. They don't have like a circulatory system, and poison usually relies on a circulatory system. But then again, I also thought to myself, well, they also have access to other things, which could potentially be, like they got bone marrow, or maybe they don't have bone marrow. I don't know how, honestly, like, they work at all. Like, they're magical, of course. They don't have sinew, they don't have tendons, they don't have things holding them together. So obviously there's some magical nature there to them that has to be, like, thought about. For some reason or another, also, they have the ability to block. I don't know why every single monster in this game has the ability to block, even monsters that don't have shields and are wielding a weapon that would preclude them from being able to block entirely, like a bow. For some reason, still have the ability to block attacks. Anywhere between 15 to 45% chance to block attacks, actually. So if you've ever been attacking them and you've wondered why, like, it seems like they seem to have, like almost infinite HP or something, or they're just impossible to kill, it's probably just because they're blocking your attacks and you have poor AR. Their HP seems to be pretty run-of-the-mill, center of the road kind of HP, nothing too fancy, nothing too low, nothing too high. And their resistances across the board are kind of weird. Like, they do have physical resistance, and some of them pretty good at 50%, which is kind of like the average in hell. But some of them a little bit on the lower end with no physical resistance in, like, Nightmare or Normal. They have no magical resistance with the exception of the Horror Archer, which has 75%. And then their fire resistance is meager, except for the Burning Dead one, which you would expect to be more resistant to fire. And the cold resistance is also meager, except for the Bone Warrior for some reason that has 75% cold. And then the lightning resistance on the Horror Archer is very high, seemingly because they dish out lightning damage, as far as I'm aware. All of them have very high poison resistance, and all of them are immune to poison in hell difficulty. Now, this is interesting to me because monsters can only have two immunities, except for the like ancients and some of the more like handcrafted monsters and like the Uber Tristram and whatnot. But for the most part, in the game, monsters are only allowed to have two immunities, which means that since all skeletons start with an immunity of poison, and they all have a very high resistance in something else, then that means that their immunities are almost always pre-decided, so that they are always going to be immune to two things and only those two things. So what that means is like, say for instance, you had a monster or a skeleton, poison resistance, he's always immune to, which becomes first. And then if he was spectral hit, for instance, it would push him over the top and he would become immune to lightning. And even if he became immune to something else as well, the thing is that, well, that doesn't matter because now he's immune to two things and he cannot be immune to three. So the third one would be disregarded. So these could be very interesting in a certain way that they are basically never immune to like the other elements, because they're always going to either be like lightning poison or cold poison or fire poison, depending on the type that they, right? Um, they make good revives, in general. Like they definitely do. These are the horror archers right here, and these are the lightning variants. And they definitely do make good revives. I mean, archers in general tend to be very good as revives, just simply because, well, they hit very well. Of course, I didn't even revive them. They hit very well. They don't really have to worry about distance to a target, or like bottle, handicaps like a doorway, or even a gate. As you can see, they're just going to fire straight through the gate and hit the target. So at a certain level, archers tend to be one of the better minions in the game, just simply because they are much easier to all hit the target at the same time, as opposed to like warriors that would be just standing at the gate looking stupid at this particular moment, or maybe one would be able to attack the monster and the rest would be standing behind him unable to do anything. And definitely good for that specific reason. The fact that they're all immune to poison also, of course, transfers over to the revives, and poison does tend to be kind of like a nasty thing in this game. So having them be immune to poison is definitely helpful when everything in this game seems to want to poison you and kill you in some way, shape, or form. Their high block chance also makes them a little bit more survivable in general. So, like, they can generally take a hit or two with a 45% chance to block. Combined with their natural defense of, 1,528 and then a 45% chance to block, they're going to survive a lot more than your average monster that has, like, 1,000, even like 2,000 or 3,000 defense with a 0% chance to block. I don't know why archers have a chance to block. I've actually noticed this on a couple different monsters now, that like a lot of the ranged monsters that don't have shields for some reason also have very high chances to block, and it's rather annoying. It makes sense why the game like tends to favor, in general, the like spellcasters, because, well, if everything has a chance to block, like even archers have a chance to block, then yeah, of course it's gonna be very hard to hit a target. I mean, thinking about it logically from a certain perspective, I mean, let's say that you had a 95% chance to hit a target as a melee character, which is the highest that you can possibly get, and then you go up against like a skeleton like this that has a 45% chance to block. That's minus 45%. So you might as well just subtract 45 directly, because 45% is going to bring you down to a total of 52.25% chance to hit, even with a 95% chance to hit. So even if you are at the top of your game, have your attack rating as high as you can possibly get it, well, you still only have a 52% chance to hit the target. And the thing is that most people aren't at 95% chance to hit a target, right? Most people are lower than that. So like you're probably sitting somewhere around more like 75%, and then obviously minus 45% brings you down to like 41.25% chance to actually hit the target. It's a little frustrating as a melee and a range character for everything to have a block chance. But I mean, it is what it is, I guess. That's just how they program the game, and well, These guys are annoying. The skeleton warriors are annoying. The skeleton archers are annoying. As a melee character, as someone who likes to play melee characters a lot, these guys are like the bane of your existence. Yes, they're not very difficult to kill. Yes, you can pretty much like kill swaths of them with your big giant sword or whatever ability you're using. But also, yes, you just eventually run out of life and mana because you can't leech from them. And they're nearly infinite, which is also a whole thing. If they are paired up with any kind of greater mummy as well, which is the Herodrum, then you're also in a situation where you have to deal with them being resurrected on a regular basis. And being resurrected on a regular basis kind of sucks too. So, like, if we go to the Act 2 bestiary and we pull up the greater mummies, these are like prime targets for the greater mummies. The greater mummies aren't specifically linked with skeletons, and it's one of the reasons why I want to have my own video on these, but they are spawned with skeletons, skeleton archers, and all sorts of other things, and they are resurrected by them. They can be healed by them and resurrected by them, and like in general, when these are paired together with the skeletons, it's just really annoying. Other than that, I mean, there's really not a lot more to talk about with these guys. Always immune to poison. They generally have their own elemental affinity, but they're not immune to that for some reason. Like, they just have really high resistances. Very good as minions. In fact, I usually go out of my way to grab the archers. I don't, like, specifically go and get the archers, you know, like in place of, say, Erdars or something like that for something important. But as I'm going along, if I kill a skeleton warrior and then I kill a skeleton archer, or I skill like a, you know, a corrupt rogue or something, I'm going to choose the skeleton archer over the melee monsters, just generally because they tend to be better revives in my opinion, especially if you can move them around. One of the problems with them, though, is they do tend to, like, not move around as much as some of the other revives, but if you have the ability to move them around via teleports, it doesn't matter. You just got like a freaking wall of arrows coming out, and it's absolutely ridiculous. These guys actually have been some of my worst monsters in this game, in some situations. Like, if you are going to, say, like Frigid Highlands or something, and you take a visit to Frigid Highlands, a lot of the times, Frigid Highlands is just filled with frickin' fire archers. And sometimes I just nope out. Like, you might call me a coward, you might say I suck, but, like, when you go to Frigid Highlands, and Frigid Highlands is filled, I mean, filled to the brim with fire archers, quill rats, and spear cats. Because it can be all three, by the way. Fire archers, spear cats, and quill rats. That is like one of the most deadly combinations, I swear, in this game, is that specific combination of monsters at Frigid Highlands. And I like farming Frigid Highlands, and I think it's a good place to farm, but the presence of the fire archers there, in combination with the spear cats, in combination with the quill rats, can sometimes be too much for a lot of melee characters. Especially in large numbers, like when you have a significant number of them all wailing on you at the same time, it can definitely be a pain in the butt. As you can clearly see, though, here, like, I'm surrounded by monsters, right? And the archers are still just plinking away. And this is one of the benefits of having archers in a necromancer army, is that, well, even if the monster is completely surrounded by your skeletons, right, they can still be hit by the ranged monsters and do significant amounts of damage. Now, this guy, he's cheated, and they're not going to be killing him anytime soon. But that's besides the point. I made him specifically for these videos so that I could show you stuff and not have to worry about my character dying while I was trying to, like, zoom in and look at the, like, texture of a skeleton, you know, like, archer, and, like, show you how they look. These guys look pretty nasty, don't they? Like, these little burning dead archers, they really do look really nasty. And they just spamming them arrows at me too. They don't care. Them little skinny bony legs can see right through your pelvis. You ain't got no wiener, I know that much. You ain't got nary a wiener. Anyway, as always, I'd appreciate you guys and gals joining me. Be sure to hit that like button and subscribe button if you enjoy the content. And as always, keep watching.